Good morning and welcome back to another WestysAngling. Today's video marks the start of this year's cold water coarse fishing campaign, where me and Papa West get ourselves out in search of big commercial perch from local fisheries. You would be surprised at how many local fisheries have perch in up to £3. Now, I did actually start this series last year and we had a few nice fish out, well over the £2 mark, but nowhere near the £3 figure that I want. The difference between a £2 perch and a £3 perch is the difference between a £20 carp and a £30 carp. So we're carrying on with it this year, and I'm going to be using much the same approach in each one of these videos. So with this being the first one this year, I'm going to talk you through the full setup of how I'm going to be targeting these fish. What I'm always going to do, where possible, when we're out on these sessions, is I am going to have a sleeper rod out on a method feeder for the carp, but I'm going to be trying something or trialing something slightly different with the method feeder, which I'm actually excited to give a go. But I will talk you through setting up for float fishing for perch. I've got myself near enough set up anyway, but what I want to do first is get this sleeper rod cast out. This is a very industrial fishery, so you'll hear noises, you'll hear bleeping, you'll hear trucks moving about. It's right on an industrial estate, so it's not the best place for filming, but my God, are there some cracking perch in here. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's get some bait mixed up and hopefully try for a couple of nice perch today. Let's see if we manage one. That was my dad's second little perch today, that. He did hook up to something bigger before, but unfortunately he had a hook pull, even though he's using a decent sized feeder hook. So whether the perch just grabbed the worm and swum off with it, who knows. But meanwhile, I'm still showing you guys how to get set up, or how I'm gonna get set up in this series. And the reason I'm talking you through the full thing today is so that I don't have to do it for the rest of the series. We can just get straight into the fishing then. So, pellets, I'm just using some of my contrast coca scope pellets. Now I'm going to do something a bit different with these, so I don't want to put too much water in them. I want them pretty dry. I put way too many in there. I'm probably only going to cast out 2-3 times on this rod today. It's just going to be a sit and leave method with bigger wafters on. So I've got a couple of colours of wafters here. I'll probably do pink to start with, and then later on in the day I'll swap onto a yellow. So this is my pink licorice. Nice bright wafters these, and these are my sweet and sour corn, which are a yellow and orange little grub imitation wafter. Train going past, absolutely brilliant. So noisy, this fishery. So let's get a tiny bit of water in there, and I mean a tiny bit. I'm going to need these pellets to soak up all that water before we do the next step. But before that, I'm just going to get a hook length. Now, because we're using carp sized wafters, and I'm doing this on purpose because they're bigger and they're more visible, and obviously we don't want to get bothered by silverfish on the sleeper rod, so that's why I'm using carp sizes. And because I'm using carp sized wafters, I'm using a size 8 feeder hook there with a bait screw, and what that does is it helps to counterbalance the bigger wafters so that they're not popped up off the method feeder when using smaller hooks. Even though I don't want to use big carp hooks. I want to keep this method feeder style. So that's that set up. In terms of the feeder, I'm going to try out different weights, but this is a 40 gram distance method feeder with a longer plastic stem, and that's important, and I'm going to show you why in a second. Then I'm using one of my battle bolt beads, which is a rubber insert and then a metal clip. So let's put our hook length on. Bear with me folks, there's method in the madness. And in terms of this setup, I'm just using 12 pound main line, but you'll get away with 10, and just a specimen rod, 2 pound test curve, 10 foot, and I've paired that with one of my own brand reels. I'm also using one of my own brand reels on the lighter setup on the float rod as well. That's got 6 pound line on. I obviously got this set up this morning. I had everything that I needed for today's session and the tackle and bait mate, including these little extra bank sticks for the sleeper rod. So I'm going to pull this in tight, this rubber insert, and that is ready for the next step. We're just going to wait until these are finished soaking up the water and we'll set up the float rod. Perch number 3, and they're heading in the right direction size wise. Look at this big overhanging root system here. It's going to be tons of perch in and around that. Right folks, float rod. I'm going to be fishing just out from this overhanging tree here, opposite to where my dad's fishing over there. And it could be today that the fish either go into my dad's swim or they come into my swim. We might both not have a good day because we're fishing so close together. I usually find that anyway. In terms of baits for this series, I'm going to be sticking with naturals on the float. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to be using a good quality ground bait, usually putting hemp in it, because this will get the silvers grubbing about, which in turn will bring in the perch with any luck. On the hook, I'm either going to be using dendrobinas, like I've got here. My dad's got some lobworms over there, so we've got a good choice between us. And if I'm really struggling, I'll use maggots just to save the blank, and we'll just get a few silvers on the bank if the perch aren't playing ball. But ideally, we want to be targeting those big perch, which means using bigger hooks and bigger worms, because there's no better perch bait than a good old wiggly worm. I actually think perch prefer lobworms to dendrobinas, whether it's just the size, whether it's something to do with how they smell, whatever, I don't know. They seem to like lobworms better. Just what I found when I've been targeting perch out on the river. But dendrobinas are considerably cheaper than lobworms, so that's why I'm using these. And I buy them for my river fishing. I do really well for other species on dendrobinas like chub and barbel and stuff, so I have them for that anyway. So that's what I've got, and that's what I'm using. A size 10 or a size 8 feeder hook, a nice big wide gape hook for targeting the bigger perch. First thing I'm going to do is plumb my depth. I've got a plummet there, which is a weight that you can actually hook into, and you cast out where you want to fish. This will sink to the bottom, and then we can adjust our float accordingly. My float setup couldn't be simpler. I've got a loaded crystal waggler there, trapped in place using 2 float stops. Then a little bit further down from that, I've got a couple of bulk shot just to help counterbalance this loaded crystal waggler. And what I mean by loaded is it already comes self-weighted, so you don't have to use as much shot with those. I always tend to use loaded wagglers rather than unloaded wagglers. Then about 4 inches from the hook, I've got a number 6. I will have to put some more shot on, but first I'm going to check my depth. Very simply, I'm going to swing this out to where I'm fishing. So if my float goes under here, that means that I need to move my float further up the line, move the float stops, and then we'll be fishing deeper in the water. So let's just flick this out and see where we are, because at the moment that's probably about 3.5 foot, and I know for a fact we're going to need to be probably a little bit deeper. Yeah, so as I thought, that's completely vanished. So we're going to move our float up the line by moving the float stops. I'm going to move them quite a bit, and then we're going to flick it back out to the same spot. Right, so we're just about perfect there. I'm going to take the plummet off, and we can micro adjust the depth if we need to, and we'll put our bait of choice on, which is a dendrobina. I'm just going to show you how I like to hook my worms. So I find the saddle of the worm, which is the thickest part, then I go round inside the worm, threading it up the shank of the hook, all the way up the shank. It's a little bit tricky this, but this is the best way to hook them. And we're going to take a maggot and we're going to put that on the hook as well, and that stops the worm coming back round the shank of the hook. But that's how you want it to look. You're going to get your best hookup rate using that. So let's cast this out. That's sat nicely on the bottom there, and I've only got a tiny little bit of float. Oh, it's straight away. Straight away, folks. I did feed some maggots before, so they're probably in the swim, but yeah, I just turned around to look at the camera then, and my float went under. Here we go, first perch, first little striper for the series. Can't beat little perch, can you, folks? Put that back. Well, there you go, that's how you do it. It's taking our maggot, so let's tip it again with another maggot, and we'll get a couple of uses out of that worm, I reckon. Get them nettles out of the way though. Keep catching on them. what you want to be doing as well is occasionally feed with chopped worm. Oh, the bite straight away, I've missed it. Should have let that one go a little bit longer. Oh dear, I'm in the tree. Well, second cast, right into the tree, hook the branch, snap my hook length. I'm going to have to tackle back up. I've had a few unsavoury words, but got my head back on and we're going to cast the sleeper rod out. Float fishing. Right, okay, pellets have taken on all the water. They're very fluffy, and I've just put a tiny little bit of ground bait in there as well, just to dry them up, and I'll show you why I want them dry. Now, there aren't many carp in this fishery at all. It's mostly a silvers lake, so I'm actually not expecting to catch anything on this today. I'm more trying out the method and see what I think of it, see if I think it's going to work on venues where there are carp in. So I'm going to load the method feeder as I normally would, squeeze some more pellets around it, then I'm actually going to put it in a solid bag, and because the pellets have taken on the water, it shouldn't melt. Not right away anyway. There you go, folks, that's my method feeder inside the solid bag. Now, I understand some of you will be like, why are you bothering with that? Method feeder pellets stick to the feeder anyway. You don't need to put it in a solid bag. Well, yes, they do stick to the feeder, but what you'll find is in winter, carp will often be in the deepest parts of the lake, and that's usually in the middle of the lake, so it's usually a bit of a cast to get there. And what you'll find is a lot of your pellets will break off the feeder on impact and then cause a spread on the bottom of the lake. That's not what I want. I want it on the bottom of the lake in a tight package with plenty of liquid around it to attract fish. I want it to be a nice, attractive little bundle that a hungry winter carp is going to move in and suck up. That's why I'm using a nice visible wafter, so that they'll be able to see it on top of that bundle, and it hopefully will just be too attractive for them to pass by on. You see, when you're casting a method feeder into a deeper lake as well, as it's sinking, a lot of those pellets will come off also. So putting it inside this solid bag will get it down to the bottom. And as you can see, because the pellets are only damp, they've not melted the bag. So I'm just going to seal this up, wetting the corners, and then, like I said, I'm using a long stem method feeder, so I can just tighten this around the stem like that. And this is going to be perfect for the cast. I'm going to put a bit of liquid in here, put some cocoa scope liquid in, and I'm going to bomb that out. It's got a nice tight drag on the bait runner, so that carp's really going to have to fight to take line. But obviously not tight enough that it's going to pull the rod in. But there you go, that's it. I'm going to re-rig back up and we'll carry on float fishing. Right, well, I've just rigged back up and plumbed back up, and we're ready to go again. You can guarantee that if I'm fishing next to a tree, I will find it at some point in the day. I'm probably laying on bottom by about 6 inch. So that means that these shot are going to be pinned to the bottom like that, and then I've got a short hook length to the worm. The reason that I went into the tree is because I'm fishing so deep. It's just really hard to control when you're flicking it out, and also when you're striking. I'm going to have to strike to the side away from the tree, and I'm just feeding bits of hemp as well. Get those silvers in, and that'll bring the bigger perch in. But I had a bite then, but I missed it. If I keep missing bites, I'll put a smaller segment of worm on, and I'll also try playing about with the depth a little bit. You know, I'll move it a few inches shallower, so I'm laying on bottom less, so on and so forth. But you'll find that these perch bites, they're pretty good takes normally, even the small ones. I was definitely getting quicker bites tighter to the tree. Oh! I don't know what that is, Dad. Something's on here, it must be a carp. This will be a carp or a pike, I reckon. I'm wondering if this might be a pike, Dad.
Where's the pike?
I think they tried to get him out, but there might be. That was a weird run. Is it a little pike?
I think that is.
Get it straight in there. That was a weird run. It's going to have messed up my hook length. Well, there you go. It's a big perch. Dad's got some pliers with him, luckily. Look at that. Float fishing. Best pike this year. I think that is a PB pike for me. It's probably about, what do you reckon, Dad, £4?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a PB pike for me, that. Oh, watch yourself. Oh. No wonder all fish are gone. Well, what can I say? That was very unexpected, but very welcome. Luckily, I nailed it right in the scissor, so we managed to get the hook out, but that could have been me re-rigging back up again. But that is exactly the reason why I love fishing so much, because you just never know what's going to happen and you never know what you're going to catch. And I'm so glad that I can bring you guys on that journey with me. And if you are enjoying the video so far, now's your chance to hit that subscribe button and you won't miss another video in this series. Let's get back into it, let's get it back out there, and hopefully I'm not bothered with any more pike, because I was really lucky to get that in. Little skimmer, different species. Got a fish on the sleeper, folks. That was a bream. I'm just going to dry off that feeder a bit and then we'll send that back out with another PVA bag. Well, I am having to tackle back up because after checking the line after the pike, it's all frayed. So unfortunately, tackling back up for the third time today. Try and tie it back up at roughly the same length, but I will have to pull my depth again. Just going to give it a little bit longer next time. Just going to give the perch a chance to get the worm in the mouths. Oh, it's going under, it's gone under, it's gone under. Yeah, there we go. So this is obviously what's been bothering us, and I just give it a little bit longer that time. And managed to nail it. Just took it a little bit of time to get it into its mouth. Right, send your pops in. Let's get a bigger one. The method feeder's dried off enough for us to put it back into the solid bag and get it back out. But that was a definite bite on this method, and I've got a feeling it was a bream. I think it came off as soon as I picked up into it, so must have been a small skimmer. And if I wasn't using a big carp wafter like I am today, that'd just be all day getting bothered with those on the method feeder. So when you use a bigger wafter, that's obviously going to happen a lot less. And this is literally just being left, folks. That's why they call it a sleeper rod. It's just going to sit here, you're concentrating on something else, and you might get an absolute lump at some point during the day in winter. When you're targeting the bigger perch, all you can do is consistently catch the small ones, try and feed them up with the maggots, and every now and again you're going to hook in to that monster. It's just a numbers game, folks. You've got to get through them small ones and hopefully get a bigger one. Trying to keep the method feeder flat on the bottom of the bag. And then I'm just going to fill it up with a load of pellets. Twist the solid bag around the stem of the method feeder. Wet it. Fold the corners in. Just makes it cast easier. You don't need to do this part if you don't want. Inject the bag with some liquid. This will help draw the carp in winter. I'm going to get that out. That's that out, sinking the line. Pops has got another perch. Slightly better one, I think, Dad. Very, very, very slightly better one. Hooked right in the corner of the mouth. Kids, if you're going fishing, make sure you're taking a disgorger. But there you go. Very slightly bigger perch. Very slightly. So my dad's losing quite a few fish, and he's lost a couple of good ones, and he thinks that his rod may be a little bit too soft and it's not allowing him to set the hook properly, whereas mine is actually a Drennan series carp waggler, very old rod, 13 foot, and I seem to be nailing the fish a lot better. I mean, you saw how well it nailed those pike. I'm still fishing scaled down, obviously bigger hooks, but scaled down to 5 pound line. Because perch are very visual feeders, I've found that scaling down does help you. Not hook size, you taper your hook size to the size of the bait. I'm confident that I could sit here and catch these little perch all day. Let's see. You obviously go through spells where the bites will dry up, but mostly you'll be able to sit here catching on worms and maggots all day. And if you're not getting bites right away, I honestly think it's worth trying to move spots. Fish the snags, fish the rocky walls, fish the overhangs, and that'll give you your best chance of being on the perch. My problem last year is because the website was open, I had very limited time on the bank and I couldn't sit here all day catching the smaller fish. I really enjoy sitting here catching the smaller fish, but I couldn't put the time into it that it needed to do full sessions, sat getting rid of all the small perch out the swim and waiting for the bigger ones to move in. So I've got more time this year and I'm confident that we'll get something better at some stage. But it might take us a while. I think they're getting smaller. Let's feed more. Let's feed heavier. Keep the small ones preoccupied with maggots. Oh, it's chilly on this side, but it's always in the shade, which is probably why the perch like it on this side. When I was opening up that pike's mouth, I just caught my little finger on one of the gill rakers, so I'm bleeding from that. I literally just lightly touched it as well. It's so sharp. This is a fat little one. Such a cool little fish. Bright fins on them. Straight away, as soon as I cast back out, I'm getting bites. Constant. Probably perch number 20 that, at least. None of them deep hooked, all hooked in the corner of the mouth. They're so greedy, these little perch. They'll try and eat full lobworms and everything. They're even if I swap to a bigger bait, I'd still be getting them. But I'd be missing the bites. My dad's using a slightly different tactic to me. He's going with a full prawn to try and stop the bites off some of the smaller perch, whereas obviously I'm trying to get through the smaller perch by catching them. So two different ways of doing things. But getting loads of little perch, loads of them. All pristine fish. Most of the time it's in seconds before I get a bite, which you'll see in a second. Nothing beats this, does it, folks? Chill morning, out on the bank, fishing with Papa West, and just getting some fish landed. No monsters yet, apart from that pike. I can't even count that, it's not even a target species, but still really nice to catch. Can't win, can you? You go targeting pike and I can't catch them, go targeting something else and I catch pike. But that's fishing. But it does make me wonder, would I have caught that pike if I'd have been dead baiting on the bottom there? Obviously, if you want to replicate what I'm doing through this winter and try these tactics out yourself, what you could also do, if you didn't want to target the carp, if you wanted to give the carp a rest on your sleeper rod, put a dead bait out on it. But a lot of these fisheries, it's always worth putting a sleeper rod out. It's just, I've always done it through winter, and I tell you what, I've had some cracking fish. But you're keeping yourself entertained on the maggots, fishing float, or I'll be rotating between float or maggot feeder or cage feeder on a small feeder rod, and it just keeps you busy, keeps you moving. Sometimes I'll fish double method feeders through the winter if I want to be lazy and just fish on bite alarms. I've lost count of how many perch I've had now, folks. They all seem to be that kind of stamp. I've not got into anything bigger yet, but I know for a fact that there are some monster perch in here. I'm not going to say sizes, but big perch. I've seen the pictures, and I'll be targeting venues on this cold water coarse fishing series that obviously has the bigger perch in. But like I said to you before, you'll be surprised at how many commercial fisheries have perch in that are over £3. Perch thrive on neglect, and what I mean by that is they're not really targeted, and they've got really big in some of these fisheries. A lot of people will fish on the pole with maggots through the winter, but they won't fish big lobworms, and a lot of the bigger perch, they won't bother with the maggots, or they'll rarely bother with the maggots. They'll want those easier meals. So you need to be fishing with slightly bigger hooks, bigger baits, bigger lobworms, big dendrobinas like this, to be in with a chance of specifically targeting them. It's not going to stop you from catching the smaller perch, as you've seen. But once I've boxed my challenges off for this year, and my challenges are a perch of around £3 and a pike over £10, once I've boxed those off, it'll be chilled sessions for the rest of the winter. Either on the river or on commercials, fishing with Papa West, targeting anything that swims. Well, that's the WestysAngling winter plan update anyway. Over the last couple of weeks, me and Papa West have been out dead baiting, but we've been unsuccessful, and I'm not wasting that footage. What I'll do is I'll wait till we have a good session, and then I'll put them all together. That way it's a little bit more entertaining. Unfortunately, with that kind of fishing, there's blanks involved. Is it my favourite type of fishing? Targeting pike with dead baits? Probably not. I'd much prefer doing something like this, or fishing on the feeder, or fishing on the river. But I really do want a bigger pike. And that means putting the time in, dead baiting, lure fishing. But yeah, a lot of blanks involved, folks. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Unless you know specific spots that hold the pike, then you need to find them. And it's finding them that takes time. Pike are very territorial and they will stick to certain areas. The question is, folks, how are we going to get through these today? We'll let him have that worm. Today I've experimented with a couple of different ways of hooking the worm on as well, because I'm catching so many. And my way is definitely the best way of hooking a worm on. I nail them much better the way that I've been doing it, but I've tried hooking them through the middle of the worm so that the worm's hanging either side of the hook, and you definitely miss more bites like that. I think the way that I do it is successful because they take the dangly end of the worm first, suck it into the mouths, and that hook's in line with the worm. So on the eject, when they try and move the worm around in the mouth, it catches the hook. So that's why that works best. And the maggot tipper obviously keeps that hook point exposed so that it always catches. These are definitely different bites, much sharper. So I have got a feeling that some silvers have moved in. Obviously I'm not hooking them because I'm using a big hook for the perch. Now obviously what I could do is I could put a smaller hook on if I wanted to target those. But because I'm going for the perch, I'm going to leave the bigger hook on, and I'll just have to deal with missing the bites until the perch come back in. I'm not sure where the perch have moved off to, but I've been catching the perch consistently for about 5 hours. That's a lot of perch. Well, this is the result of swapping to double maggot. I think they're getting smaller, folks. That one's a real angry one. Look at it with its fins up. Back onto worm. Just had a single bleep on the sleeper rod. That's been very quiet today. Just need some WestysAngling good luck. But saying that, I'm so chuffed with how this session's gone. I've absolutely bagged up on those small perch, and that pike was worth coming down here for on its own, you know what I mean? Bubbles coming up around the float. Definitely silvers down there. Well, I'm not sure what else I can do, folks, to try and target the bigger fish. I'm just going to cut some of these worm up, and I'll try feeding chopped worm and see if I can draw something bigger in that way. Just need to keep plugging away. Oh, getting a bite. It's a nice stripy one. Look at the stripes on that one. Well, we're back on the perch. Come on, where are the big boys? Today, folks, I've gone through about 500 grams of dendrobinas. That's how many perch I've caught. Some of them I'm reusing as well. But I've just come up in the water maybe like a foot. I'm getting quicker and better bites as well. While we're waiting for this next bite, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of using a float rod like the setup that we're using today compared to maybe like a maggot feeder or a cage feeder, and why I've chosen this method for today's session. Using targeting little perch like we've been doing today, or big perch as an example, there's a few benefits to using a float rod. One, you can obviously consistently feed to a spot when you're fishing close in. So you can underarm pellets out, you can underarm maggots out, whatever you're feeding, you can be very, very accurate to a very small spot and fish over the top of that. The other benefit is you're in direct contact with the hook bait. It's a very subtle, very fine method of indication that's going to allow you to see every little knock. Oh, this is a slightly better one. Every little knock, every little bite like that one. Whereas when you feeder fishing, you won't get as quick an indication because the fish has got to pull the hook length a certain distance before you even get any kind of indication on the tip, which when targeting perch could potentially lead to deep hooking them. Whereas when you're fishing float, you can be very responsive and strike into the fish straight away, and most of the time you're going to hook them in the lip. So that's the main method. So I would say if you're fishing close in, then use a float, but if you're fishing further away, then that's when the feeder comes into its own, because you're going to be able to get your bait out much further when you're using a feeder. So I would say if you're fishing in the margins, anything to maybe like 10 foot out, use your float rod. If you're fishing any further out than that, go on to a maggot feeder or a cage feeder. So for example, if you're fishing up to some kind of structure, maybe there's a stone island that you know the perch are going to be around, maybe you want to be fishing to an overhanging tree and you can't access it with a float, In that situation, a maggot feeder or a cage feeder is going to be the way forward. But for today, fishing next to this big overhanging tree, really close in, the float's been absolutely king, and it's such a sensitive method of indication that you can catch these small fish all day long. It's also much easier, much quicker to reset and get fishing again once you've caught a fish. And you're not putting the other fish off in the swim. Keep landing a feeder in every single cast. But at this time of year, I've always got my float rod with me, and I've always got a feeder rod set up, a light feeder rod with like a 1 ounce tip on, set up, ready for maggot feeder fishing. And always, always, always at this time of year, go into your local tackle shop and get yourself some maggots. It can be the difference between catching and not catching. Or at the very least, get yourself some small dendrobinas. Obviously, dendrobinas will keep much longer than maggots, and I understand that sometimes your partner or your significant other won't let you keep maggots in the fridge. I mean, at this time of year, they're fine in the garage anyway, because the garage is usually cold enough, assuming that you've got a garage. But live moving baits, wriggling baits like worms and maggots are almost always guaranteed to save you the blank. We're in. Got me into a snag then, whatever it is. Must be a carp. Can't be another pike. Not on a wafter, surely. Not on a wafter. I was told there's hardly any carp in here. What is it? Oh, it's a little common on the sleeper rod. There we go, on the pink licorice. Wafters in near freezing temperatures. I think it was potentially snagged round something. Over a branch anyway to start with. Not brought my own hooking mat with me today, so we're just going to hold it over the net there. Nice common that, folks. Look at the colours on that one. Save the blank on the sleeper rod. Yeah, it's a really nice, pristine. Like I said, they're not really targeted in here, are they? So, straight back. Method in the madness, folks. That's a nice fish on the carp size pink licorice wafters. Well, I'm sorry folks, you'll have to wait until I reopen the website in spring to get some of those, unfortunately. But shows they work. So if you're wondering how Papa West has got on today, he's probably had just as many small perch as I have on the opposite side of the tree there. All the same kind of stamp, and he's had a bream as well. So it's been a good day for us both. I'm just carrying on, plugging away at these small fish. But my hope is dwindling for something bigger. Well, I've just caught a PB here, and it's a rough. My first ever rough. I don't know whether you can see it on this camera, but its eyes are actually purple. Stunning. What a day of surprises. Beautiful. I'm going to get it back. Well, catching that little rough has absolutely made my day. I'm so chuffed with that. I've had a cracking day today. I've caught countless amounts of those little perch. We've had a carp on the sleeper rod. So all in all, it's been a really enjoyable day. Thanks very much for joining me on this journey. I'm going to carry on fishing. If I get anything better that's going to completely round off the day, I'll put the clip in after this one. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Westies Angling. I don't know what we'll be doing, but we'll be out on the bank somewhere. Before you switch off, folks, I've got one last thing to ask and one last message for you. If you did enjoy it, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with an angling friend, and I want you to tell me in the comments section what's your most unexpected catch while you've been out fishing. Something that you weren't targeting but absolutely made your day. And to one lucky winner in the comments, as a thank you for watching the video, I'll be giving away one of my WestysAngling 2-litre flasks. I'll pick somebody at random about 2 weeks after the video launches and get you one sent out. But yeah, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time, folks. As I said, a better perch. I said now that we're losing the light, we might start getting them. Let's have a look at it. Let's turn it around. There we go. That's much better than the stamp that we've been getting. That's half a pound, isn't it?
6 cents, Dad.
Yeah. Nice perch. You need to put it back, Dad.
Yeah.
On the sleeper rod. That's why you've got to use big wafters.